Una three dey enjoy my husband money, dey flex, dey travel. Now una go care for am. Una go baff am, feed am, dey wash am. If not, una go learn.
This story is a true warning about betrayal, greed, and the comeback only a strong African woman can deliver. If you believe in karma, revenge, and the secret power of a patient wife, stay with me till the end. Jonathan sat in his wheelchair, silent, his head bowed. His wife Sarah stood over him, holding his phone, smiling quietly. He could not talk, but his tears betrayed him. That was the day he realized, the women he thought loved him had abandoned him, and only Sarah, the wife he betrayed, remained. If you want to know what happened to Jonathan and why he is on a wheelchair, make sure you subscribe and follow, because what you're about to hear is filled with betrayal, greed, revenge, and a twist that will shock you to your bones. But before this day, Jonathan was the pride of Port City. Handsome, brilliant, smooth-tongued, he was the dream of many women. Sarah, rich and humble, had chosen him over wealthier suitors. Against her parents' warnings, she loved him. She helped him graduate, got him a job in an oil company in Abuja, and together they built a home. She gave him her heart, but Jonathan's hunger for women was greater than his hunger for success. Sarah was born into wealth. Her father was a respected businessman in Port, her mother a woman of grace. She grew up surrounded by comfort, but she chose Jonathan, a man whose parents had nothing. Friends mocked her, but she believed in his brilliance and potential. When Jonathan finished studying maritime, Sarah's father used his influence to secure him a lucrative job in an oil company. Offshore trips meant big money, and soon, they relocated to Abuja. Sarah thought her loyalty had paid off. They were blessed with two beautiful daughters, Chidinma and Amora. Life looked perfect on the outside, but Jonathan's heart was restless. Jonathan had always loved attention from women. Even back in university, Sarah caught him flirting countless times. She dismissed it as youthful play, telling herself, he will change when we marry. But marriage didn't cure his weakness. Money only fueled it. Instagram became his hunting ground. He sent women money, booked flights, and lavished them with gifts. Even married women were not off limits. Jonathan thought he was untouchable. What Sarah didn't know was that three particular women held his attention more than the rest: Anita, Abigail, and Jennifer. Each one played a dangerous role in Jonathan's double life. Anita was young, beautiful, and curvy, with a body that commanded attention. She was always asking Jonathan for rent, shopping sprees, and trips. He never said no. She drained his pockets, and he smiled through it. Abigail was different. A married woman Jonathan had dated before she got married. She was also endowed, and Jonathan loved the forbidden thrill of sneaking around with her. Jennifer, on the other hand, was his secretary in the office. Sharp, ambitious, and bold, she knew how to keep his secrets and exploit them. Together, these three women fed his ego while Sarah, the wife, stayed faithful at home. Sarah was not foolish. She noticed Jonathan's late nights, secretive phone habits, and sudden mood changes. She knew he was hiding something. At first, she prayed, hoping he would change. But doubt grew like fire in her chest. One evening, when Jonathan was away on an offshore trip, Sarah made a decision. She paid a hacker to break into Jonathan's phone. What she found broke her heart: receipts of hotel bookings, flight tickets, transfers, pictures, and endless chats with Anita, Abigail, and Jennifer. Sarah was shattered, but she kept her cool. She smiled in Jonathan's presence and played the loving wife. But inside, she began to gather evidence. Life has a way of humbling the proud. Jonathan traveled on another offshore assignment, and this time he took a lady along. But tragedy struck. There was an accident at sea, and Jonathan was among the injured. When Sarah got the call, she rushed to the hospital. Her heart sank when she saw him in a coma, tubes running through his body. For 1 month, Sarah prayed and wept by his bedside. When Jonathan finally woke up, he was not the same man. His hands were weak, his legs damaged, his voice gone. The playboy who once carried women now needed help to eat, bathe, and even use the toilet. Sarah became his caretaker. But she also became something else, his silent judge. Jonathan couldn't handle his phone anymore, So Sarah became his voice. She answered his calls, replied to his messages, and handled his bank alerts. That was when the real drama began. Messages poured in from Anita, Abigail, and Jennifer. They wanted money. They wanted trips. They wanted his attention. Sarah smiled as she typed back, pretending to be Jonathan. She sent them money when they asked, gave excuses that his wife was away, and even arranged a meeting. What they didn't know was that Sarah was weaving a trap that would expose them and punish Jonathan all at once. The day came. Sarah discharged the house security and waited. Anita arrived first, dressed to kill, her smile fading when Sarah opened the door. "Oh, madam," she stuttered, but Sarah smiled and locked the gate behind her. Next came Abigail, shocked to find Sarah waiting. Then Jennifer walked in, confident until she realized she wasn't alone. Sarah sat them down. Calmly, she revealed everything, every secret, every receipt, every message. They froze in shame. Sarah gave them two options: comply with her plan, or she would expose them on Instagram and ruin their lives. Fear gripped them. They had no choice. Sarah's plan was simple but brutal. "Since you all enjoyed Jonathan when he was healthy," she said, "you will now take care of him while he is broken." She had already installed CCTV in every corner of the house, including the kitchen and toilet. The women protested, but Sarah's evidence was too strong. They began their punishment: bathing Jonathan, changing his diaper, feeding him, cooking his meals. Jonathan wept silently, humiliated. The women covered their noses when cleaning his mess, grumbling and insulting him. For 3 days, they endured the humiliation. By the 4th day, they begged to be released. Sarah, with a smile, agreed. Sarah called them together and handed each of them transport money. "Go," she said. "But never come back." They ran out of the house like prisoners released from chains. Phones buzzed with blocked contacts, Jonathan's number deleted, his social media unfollowed. That evening, Sarah wheeled Jonathan to the parlor, sat him down, and played the CCTV footage on the TV. Jonathan watched in horror as his beloved side chicks insulted and abandoned him. He broke down in tears, but he could not speak. For the first time, he understood what betrayal felt like. Karma had arrived at his doorstep. Sarah stood tall that night, looking at Jonathan. He was helpless, broken, and ashamed. She had always been the gentle wife, the quiet helper, but now the power was in her hands. She controlled his phone, his bank, his image. Every woman who once mocked her now feared her. Jonathan wanted to speak, to beg, but his tongue betrayed him. He could only cry. Sarah wiped his tears and whispered, "Don't worry, my husband. You will learn. Slowly, painfully, but you will learn." The once noisy mansion in Abuja was now quiet. No women's laughter, no ringing phones, no secret trips. Only Sarah's steady footsteps echoed in the house. She moved with confidence now, managing Jonathan's life, managing the children, managing everything. The girls, Chidinma and Amora, didn't know the full story. They only saw their father sick and their mother strong. Sarah shielded them from the pain, but deep inside, she burned with betrayal. She had the evidence saved, locked away. One day, she knew, Jonathan would face every single piece. Sarah hired a therapist named Dr. Okoro, a strict man with a firm hand. "If he wants to live, he must fight," Dr. Okoro said. Sarah agreed. Jonathan groaned through painful sessions as his weak legs were stretched and pressed. His sweat poured, his face twisted in agony. At first, he wanted to give up, but Sarah stood by his side. "You will walk again," she said coldly. "Not because I pity you, but because you must see life standing, not crawling." Her words cut deep, but they fueled his will. Slowly, painfully, Jonathan began to respond. In his prime, Jonathan was like a king. He strutted through offices, women chasing him like bees to honey. But now, he was forgotten. Anita stopped calling. Abigail blocked him. Jennifer deleted his number. The same women who swore they loved him vanished like smoke. Lying in bed at night, Jonathan wept. He remembered the insults while they cleaned him, the disgust on their faces. Shame swallowed him. For the first time, he thought of Sarah's tears, of the nights she waited for him while he was in another woman's arms. Sarah did not shout. She did not fight. Her revenge was silent, calculated, and sharp. Every time Jonathan reached for his phone, she smiled and said, "Don't worry, I've handled it." Every time his bank alert came, she signed the papers. One evening, she placed a pile of receipts on his lap: hotel bills, flight bookings, transfers. "This is your legacy," she said. Jonathan cried, unable to reply. Sarah turned and walked away. Sometimes silence punishes louder than words. Jonathan's old friends came visiting. Men he once partied with, drinking and chasing women. They entered, looked at him in his wheelchair, and whispered among themselves, "See Jonathan, the big boy. Look at him now." Sarah heard it, but she didn't chase them away. She wanted Jonathan to feel it, to taste the mockery, to swallow the shame. That night, he refused to eat. He stared at the ceiling, broken. Sarah tucked the children in bed and whispered, "Daddy is learning his lesson." Therapy was brutal. Jonathan's legs trembled like weak bamboo. With crutches, he tried to rise. He fell, again and again. Dr. Okoro was merciless. "Stand up, man. Stand up for your wife," he shouted. Sarah stood in the corner, her face unreadable. Finally, Jonathan managed to stand for 5 seconds. He cried, not from pain, but from the bitter taste of humility. For years, he stood tall with pride. Now, standing was a gift. Sarah clapped lightly, not out of joy, but to remind him that every step was borrowed grace. One night, little Amora asked, "Mummy, why does Daddy cry so much?" Sarah's heart broke. She wanted to tell her everything, but she only smiled. "Because Daddy is healing." Jonathan heard it and wept harder. He realized his sins were not private, they touched his children too. His girls would one day grow up and ask questions. What would he tell them? That he threw away his family for strangers? Even in weakness, Jonathan's phone buzzed with messages. Not from Anita, Abigail, or Jennifer, but from new women who had heard he was once rich. Sarah read them all and smiled. She replied politely, pretending to be Jonathan, but then blocked each one. Jonathan watched, ashamed. For the first time, he was grateful. He didn't want temptation anymore. He wanted peace. He wanted his wife back. One evening, Sarah sat beside him. "Jonathan," she said softly, "do you know why I didn't leave you?" He shook his head. Tears filled his eyes. "Because I wanted you to see who truly loves you. Money will vanish. Beauty will fade. Side chicks will run. But I stayed. Not because I'm weak, but because I am stronger than all of them combined." Jonathan broke down, sobbing like a child. For the first time, he whispered, "Forgive me." His voice was weak, but Sarah heard it. Sarah dragged Jonathan back to church. At first, he resisted, ashamed of his condition. But the pastor welcomed him warmly. "Better a broken man in God's house than a proud man in the world," the pastor said. Slowly, Jonathan found comfort in prayer. He held Sarah's hands during worship, something he hadn't done in years. The children smiled, happy to see their parents together again. Healing had begun, not just in his body, but in his soul. One evening, Sarah received a call. It was Anita. She was crying. Her landlord had thrown her out. She begged to speak to Jonathan. Sarah handed him the phone. Jonathan listened in silence, then whispered, "I can't help you." For the first time, he rejected her. Anita cursed him, but Jonathan felt no pain. He hung up and turned to Sarah. "I'm done with them." Sarah nodded, but inside, she knew this was just the beginning of his true test. News spread that Abigail's marriage had collapsed. Her husband discovered her secret past with Jonathan, and she was thrown out of her home. Jonathan heard it and trembled. "My sin destroyed her too," he whispered. Sarah looked at him coldly. "Sin always destroys more than the sinner," she replied. Jonathan bowed his head. Another piece of karma had landed. Jennifer, the secretary, tried to blackmail Jonathan. She threatened to leak office secrets unless he paid her. Sarah handled it. She called Jennifer to the house, played CCTV footage of her visits, and warned, "If you try me, I'll bury your name online." Jennifer fled, never to return. Jonathan watched Sarah with awe. She was no longer the naive wife he once deceived. She was a lioness, fierce and fearless. Months passed. Therapy worked. Jonathan moved from wheelchair to crutches. Each step was painful but victorious. Sarah clapped for him this time, genuine pride in her eyes. The children cheered. For once, Jonathan felt alive, not because of wealth or women, but because of family. He prayed nightly, asking God to forgive his wasted years. Sarah watched quietly, knowing that brokenness had rebuilt her husband. Jonathan deleted all his social media accounts. The man who once chased women now avoided even looking at them. He spent evenings reading the Bible with Sarah, something he had never done before. At work, he returned humbly, no longer the boss with pride, but the man who listened, respected, and thanked others. His colleagues were shocked. Some mocked him, but Jonathan smiled. He had learned the hard way. One afternoon, a young lady approached Jonathan at a gas station. "Sir, you are handsome. Can I get your number?" Jonathan froze. The old Jonathan would have smiled and agreed. But this time, he shook his head and walked away. Sarah, watching from the car, smiled. He was changing. That night, Jonathan knelt before Sarah. "You are my only woman," he whispered. And for the first time, Sarah believed him. In church, Jonathan asked for the microphone. He stood, leaning on his crutch, and faced the congregation. "I was a fool," he said. "I betrayed my wife. I chased women. But when I fell, they left me. Only Sarah stayed. I stand today because of her." The church erupted in tears and applause. Sarah wept too, not from pain, but from relief. Jonathan had finally humbled himself before God and man. Life slowly returned to peace. Jonathan spent more time with his daughters, helping with homework, telling them stories. Sarah watched with joy. The scars of betrayal were deep, but love was deeper. One evening, the family sat together for dinner. Jonathan raised his glass of water. "To Sarah, the woman who saved my life." The children clapped, and Sarah smiled softly. Jonathan never fully recovered. One leg remained weak, and he walked with a crutch for life. But that crutch became his reminder. Every step he took reminded him of the women he lost, the shame he endured, and the wife he almost destroyed. Sarah forgave, but she never forgot. She stayed not because she was weak, but because she was stronger than betrayal. Jonathan spent his remaining years proving his loyalty, never again looking at another woman. And whenever young men asked him for advice, he said one thing: never betray a good woman, because when karma comes, no side chick will save you. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe, follow, and share. Someone you know needs to hear this lesson today.